I chose the tissues and tissue organization system, along with phylum Nematoda, the roundworm, Platyhelminthes, the flatworm, and Porifera, the sponges. The cells of most animals are organized into tissues, which are groups of similar cells that act as a functional unit. I will be discussing the different tissue layers of the phylum, along with their body cavities that are surrounded by these tissue layers, and the muscle tissues and nervous tissues. And while phylum Porifera lack true tissues and body cavities, they do have a loose organization of various type of cells within the sponge that act on their own. The first phylum that I will be talking about is phylum Nematoda, the roundworm. Nematoda is a triploblastic animal, which means they have three tissue layers. An endoderm, which is the innermost tissue layer that lines the pouch that forms during gastrulation and becomes the lining of the digestive tract and of organs like lungs, pancreas, and liver. The mesoderm, which fills the space between the ectoderm and the endoderm and becomes the muscles and other organs between the digestive tract and the outer covering of the animal. And lastly, ectoderm, which is the outer tissue covering the embryo surface, and it becomes the central nervous system. Roundworms also have a cuticle that serves for protection and is outside of the epidermis. They also have one type of muscle called longitudinal muscles. And they also have a simple nervous tissue that consists of a ring of nervous tissue around the pharynx that gives rise to dorsal and ventral nerve cords running the length of the body. In this picture on the right, you can see number 1 is the cuticle, the tough outer exoskeleton. Number 2 is the epidermis, which is the outer layer of the embryo. And number 4 is the pseudocoelom, which I will be discussing more about in the next slide. Phylum Nematode has a body cavity that's pseudocoelom. In this picture, you can see that the body cavity is surrounded by the muscle layer from the mesoderm and the digestive tract from the endoderm. The next phylum that I will be talking about is phylum Platyhelminthes, the flatworm. Just like phylum Nematode, they are also triploblastic in that they have an endoderm, an ectoderm, and a mesoderm. Unlike the simple nervous system of phylum Nematode, the flatworms have a cephalized nervous system that consists of head ganglion, usually attached to longitudinal nerve cords that are interconnected across the body by transverse branches. They also differ from the last phylum in that they're acoelomates with no true body cavity. And as seen here on the picture on the top right, where the body cavity should be, it is completely filled by mesoderm. And unlike phylum Nematode, phylum Platyhelminthes has longitudinal, circular, and oblique muscle layers. The picture on the top left corner shows the arrow pointing to the epidermis or the ectoderm. Number 2 is the gastrodermis or the endoderm. And number 5 is the parenchyma, which is the mesoderm, and the rest of the body is filled with this. The last phylum that I will be talking about is phylum Porifera, the sponges. This phylum differs from the other two phylum Nematoda and phylum Platyhelminthes, in that it lacks true tissues. Instead, they have cellular level organization, which means all the cells within the sponge act on their own, and they're held together by an extracellular matrix. They have two types of cells, choanocytes and amoebocytes, also called archaeocytes. Choanocytes work together, beating their flagellum, and create a water current that pulls water from the outside of the sponge through the pores into the incurrent canal and radial canals. The picture shows number 2, which is the radial canal lined by choanocytes. Amoebocytes, or archaeocytes, can move around the mesohele, which is the extracellular matrix, and they can phagocytose food from choanocytes, and they are undifferentiated, which means they can turn into other types of cells within the sponge. They can turn into cells that produce spicules, sperm, and eggs. Pinacocytes make up the outside of the sponge and form an epithelial tissue. To conclude, phylum Nematode and Platyhelminthes are both triploblastic animals with 3 tissue layers but differ in body cavities, while phylum Porifera lacks true tissues because the cells of the sponge are just embedded in the extracellular matrix called the mesohele that don't lay on any basal membrane, nor do they have any cell-to-cell extracellular junctions.